Buenas tardes a todos. Welcome everyone, and thanks for accompanying us on this International Women's Day. First, let us hear the welcoming words from Oscar Pujol, Director of the Instituto Cervantes in New Delhi.
So, bienvenidos al Instituto Cervantes de Nueva Delhi, and welcome to the Instituto Cervantes of New Delhi. It's such a joy to be here on this occasion again, 1 year more. And I would like to thank, first of all, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Spain, José María Ridao, who was very eager to be here, but his many commitments are not allowing him. And thanks very much for putting together, along with Instituto Cervantes, this event. I would like also to thank Chief of Mission, Elena Pérez Villanueva, also charge of the Cultural Department of the Embassy, Guillermo Martín, and all the team of the Embassy. We have Mariano, Selja, Tania, who have made possible this event. Of course, I would like also to thank the team of the Cervantes, with Alejandro, Sania, Sharmista, Vikash, Vartika, so many people behind, Siam, to put all this together again. This is 8th of March, and this year our program for the International Women's Days is not going to last a single day, but 20 days. Because we're starting today with the first movie that many of you were able to enjoy, También La Lluvia, and we will be screening a movie every week till the 28th of March. So the event is continuing, and we hope you will be attending our screenings. Say that beside También La Lluvia, we have Siete Mesas de Billar Francés, Matajares, and 15 años y un día, by two outstanding women directors from Spain, Iciar Bolaín y Gracia Querejeta. It's also, a part of this event today. I am very happy to have with us Cristina Montiel. She's an intern from the commercial office, and she will give a presentation on the situation of the women entrepreneurs in India. Thanks very much for this collaboration. We are really eager to listen to your address. And I must say that it's a great privilege, even if she's not, present here, to have an outstanding writer, Laura Freixas. She has written, a lot on gender, and I will just and to have her here on the screen addressing on feminism on this day, I think it's really a wonderful occasion for us to know how women writers in Spain are treating the question of feminism and literature. I would like to say that Laura Freixas has published many novels, but recently one outstanding, and many of you will understand the Spanish title, which is A mí no me iba a pasar, which translates loosely as This is not happening to me, but it seems it is happening. This is his latest novel. It's been hailed as a masterpiece by literary critics in Spain, and it is an autobiography with a gender perspective. So we're looking very much forward to hear Laura Freixas on this occasion. And finally, to top it all, we have our dear Hispanist, Sonia Gupta from Jamia Millia Islamia, Vijaya Venkataraman from Delhi University, Libby Biswas from GNU, and Meenakshi Sundrial also from GNU. These women have been working on literature and femininity since long time. They are the real, ambassadors of our languages, and we are very eager to listen to her, or to them also, speaking on literature and femininity in India, which will be like a reflection of the situation of the woman in India. It will be moderated by Guillermo Martín, and this will be our final roundtable. After that, we will have a cocktail. I would like to say, that we are here again, and I sense that a lot has been done for the situation of the woman, but much more needs to be done still. There are many rights that still have to be conquered, equality that has to be really fulfilled in an effective way. Until then, we will be here celebrating the International Women's Day. Thank you very much and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Oscar, for your warm words. Now, I'd like to invite to the stage to Elena Pérez Villanueva, Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Spain.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. I would like to speak in the name of the ambassador, who was one of the inspirers of this event. Unfortunately, he could not make it. First of all, I want to thank Oscar, Alejandro, and the whole team of Cervantes for welcoming us here again. Like they say, one more year. We will be here next year because I'm sure there's still some things to do. And thank you, the cultural team of the embassy, Guillermo, Tania, Shaya, and the rest of the embassy for putting all this together. Thank you, Cristina, and our favorite Hispanists who are going to either participate or are here as a public. Like I said, the ambassador is not here today because he is right now busy with another visit, which is by a very important lady, high-level rank official, which is the Vice Minister of Defense, which is a field that is probably more seen as masculine. There's, yes, in Spain too, but a few years ago we had a big moment of change when a pregnant woman was appointed as a Minister of Defense. I don't know if you saw, last year we had an exhibition here of the evolution of women in Spain since 1920s until now. And one of the big pictures that was really, it's iconic, it's a Minister of Defense, a woman, pregnant, that was saluting the troops. Many years later, we have a Minister of Defense that is a woman, and she is surrounded, today it was in one of the magazines in Spain for Women's Day, there was an article on women who are leading the armed forces and the Secret Service in Spain. We also have ministers in other areas that are traditionally masculine, because unfortunately this has been, and is still the case, very often that women are in culture, which is very important, but it's like soft power, or in education, or care, and that is very feminine, but it can be also masculine. So I'm very happy to see that there's a lot of men here, because I think most of us are already convinced of gender equality, but we need you, men, to be with us, and I know that you are all committed to that, so thank you very much for coming here and spreading the word. So, like I said, there is an example in Spain, which is a lot of ministers that are now in charge. There is a prime minister, which is a man. That happens. We've never had a woman. You had in India, so there's a lot of things that you are ahead of us. Don't forget that. And we have 3 deputy prime ministers who are in charge of the biggest dossiers, the economy, labor, and the energy and the ecological transition. And she was here very recently, by the way. So we have the Secretary of Defense here, and she's an example. She's working a lot with India on defense industry, but she's an example of what you ladies can be if you decide that. We have to remember, and what we try to do at the embassy, we have been working a lot. We were gender champions of the European Union, so we were like the leaders last year in gender equality activities in India. Then we passed the flag to France, to Italy, and other countries. But gender equality that we have been working on at the embassy, we're super committed, is a priority both in Spain, inside the borders of Spain, and outside. So of course in India it's one of our priorities. And we have been trying to inspire, to show you what we have done in Spain, that can give you examples and can inspire. Unfortunately, we have had an example recently of the things that still need to change, not only here, but in many countries, including Spain. There was a case of gender-based violence, an attack against a woman. You have most likely heard about it. But we have received such a big wave of solidarity and love from the Indian public that we see that that is unfortunately a minority, and we hope it will disappear. We need to work on that, but I would like to thank you all for all the support that you have shown. And I wish you all a wonderful Women's Day, and enjoy the work of Cristina, the message of Laura, and the wonderful round table that we will have with a lot of interesting debates. So thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Elena, for these inspiring words and for your work towards gender equality. I want to introduce you now to Cristina Montiel. She is spending this year in Delhi as an A6 trainee, working in the External Commerce Office from the Embassy of Spain. She has recently developed a study on women's entrepreneurs in India, researching how it's like for both Indian and Spanish women to work in the business world in this country. And she is now going to present her conclusions with us. Please welcome Cristina Montiel.
Muchas gracias, Mariano. Thank you, Mariano. Good afternoon. Namaskar. मेरा नाम क्रिस्टीना है. आपका आज अंतर्राष्ट्रीय महिला दिवस के इस कार्यक्रम में स्वागत है. There continue to be important differences in access to labor force between men and women in India. While access to education is relatively similar and continues to improve, this has not meant an improvement in access to the labor force in India for women. There is a severe underrepresentation of female workers in India, but this is not all negative, because women are joining forces to promote an increase in participation in the labor force. And there are many success stories, as well as an increasing number of organizations that are currently working to support women in different settings, both rural and urban, who face different challenges. I want to thank Instituto Cervantes and the Spanish Embassy for giving me the opportunity to present the results of the study that my team conducted in regards to the situation of women in the workforce in India. It has been a challenge, but also a thrill, to learn so much about the situation of women in this country, both foreigner and national, and to learn about the movements and support systems that there are currently in India. This study is conducted by IFEX in 12 different countries around the world, and its main objective is to understand the situation of working women in each of the countries, so India in this case, and to give a vision of the situation for foreign women and Spanish women in particular who are considering moving abroad for work in both public and private jobs. So first of all, I want to give some relevant information about data to see a bit more how the situation of women is actually in India. So India is right now country number 127 out of 146 when it comes to the global gender gap. However, it is number 142, so it's on the bottom 4 when it comes to female participation in the workforce. There's only approximately 25% of female workers in India. This data contrasts greatly with the enrollment in education. Enrollment in primary, secondary, and university education in India is almost the same for men and women. At university level, there is only a 3% gap, which means that there are many, many women in India going to university. When it comes to the type of degrees that women choose, it's very similar across all the world. In India, women prefer degrees like humanities or business, whereas men try to go for more scientific degrees, as was just mentioned previously. However, this is a global trend. This happens in Spain, in India, and in many other countries. However, as I mentioned, even though the desire for women to go to university is quite high and quite prevalent, then after they finish their university degree, they don't join the workforce. And one of the main questions that we had when we developed our study was why? Why is there such a gap in India between the females that go to higher education and the ones that work? This is because, as I said, it's only 25%. And the higher up we get in the hierarchy of a business, the less women are present. For instance, only 17% of boards of directors are filled with women, and only 8.9% of CEOs in India are female. And the number decreases even more to 1.8% when it comes to businesses that are owned by women. So as you can see, the trend decreases gradually, and the higher up in power that the structure gets, the least female representatives there are. Moreover, there's also a very big income gap in India. The gap is 64%. That means that for the same type of jobs, men are paid 64% more than women, which is also a big problem because it means that women cannot be financially independent, or that it is much harder for women to be financially independent in India than it is for men. So in order to analyze or understand why there's such a gap between women that are in universities and women that are working, we wanted to focus on two different aspects that we thought were key, and that we gathered that were key from the interviews that we've had with various Spanish and foreigners as well as Indian women. So these two main aspects are the legal aspect and the socio-cultural aspect. So legally, the rights of men and women in India are relatively similar. There are actually some laws that have been passed to help women enter the workforce and to help them be more represented. For instance, according legally in India, 1/3 of all the board members should be female. This is a requirement. However, it is not something that happens all the time. For example, right now, at the governmental level, only 15% of the workers, of the people, are female, rather than the 33% that it should be because of the 1/3 quota. However, it's not all negative because, as we have mentioned before, India is number 10 out of all the countries in the world that has had more female prime ministers and presidents. This is an incredible number. It's number 10. Spain, as we have just mentioned also, is doing much worse. We have never had a president that has been a female. So that means that in India, there is a lot of progress that has been made, and there's even more progress that is happening and will come. The only two legal differences between men and women in India are that women have a harder situation inheriting their family's inheritance, and they have lesser rights when it comes to divorce. These two situations don't affect directly the workforce, but they are relevant. They do affect, even if it's in an indirect way. So after this brief legal analysis, we figured out that the legal code in India is not necessarily the reason why so many females choose not to enter the workforce. So then we thought that there might be another reason, and we gathered this also from the interviews that we had. And these issues are more social and cultural. So that's why now I want to talk briefly about some social aspects that hinder women's access to the workforce. So in India, as I said, it is very common for women to go to school. And what is the main reason? Well, we found out that one of the main reasons is that for women to have an education makes them more desirable in what we have learned is called the marriage market. This means that sometimes their parents want them to go to university so that they have a better chance at finding a good husband that can then provide for this woman. So this happens in higher socioeconomical classes where the women are already from a good background and then choose to go to college so that they can secure their future. So that's also very interesting because it means that it is actually more likely for women that are higher up in the socioeconomical status to choose not to work. This is because women that are from lower classes need to work in order to provide food and safety for their families. But when a woman is from a higher class, they don't necessarily have to work to have their food and their shelter and their basic needs covered. So then it becomes less likely that they will choose to join the labor force. So this is one of the main situations and main challenges that we found that women find when they want to enter the labor force. Another relevant situation is that sometimes their parents or spouses don't want them to join the labor market because they see it as inappropriate. This is changing a lot. So we're seeing more and more females that are joining the workforce, but it is sometimes perceived as a danger or a challenge to their integrity if they join the workforce because they will be exposed to working with a lot of men. And this happens more often than not in more traditional and rural areas, but it also happens in urban settings, although, as I already mentioned, the situation is changing. Another relevant aspect is that when women do enter the workforce, they do find other challenges that, at least at first, can prevent them from fully feeling confident doing their business and their work. So, for example, from our interviews, we have learned that when women enter spaces, it is more likely that the interlocutor will greet the man with them first, and this is regardless of their position of hierarchy in a company. It basically means that when a man and a woman enter a room, the other interlocutor will always or almost always assume that the man is the one that has the most power. However, when the woman does mention that she's the one that has the most power, the Indian public will approach the woman. It's not that they won't talk to her. They will, but they will simply assume that the man is the one in power. So sometimes this can be a shock for women, particularly for foreigners that might not be used to the situation, but it is something that we have learned from our conversations, that it is not that big of a challenge, because women also can adjust and they can learn that they have to be the ones saying their role and asserting their importance in the hierarchy or in their company, so that other men will know who they are and will treat them accordingly. Another issue that women have faced is that India, as you all know, is a very big country and a very diverse country, and it is not the same to do business in the north or in the south or in the different regions. And sometimes when women come to India, they have expectations that maybe they don't meet the reality, because they have learned specificities from a part of India that is not the part of India where they go. So in order to accommodate for this situation, women should try to learn when they want to come to India about the different aspects that influence the different parts of India, so that they don't find these challenges that they could avoid. And another difficulty that we have been told is that sometimes men ask both foreign and Indian women a lot of questions about their personal and private lives. For instance, if they're married, if they have children. Sometimes they assume that the women who come to India, they do so because they're married with an Indian person, or because their husbands are the ones who wanted to move to India. However, this can be perceived as negatively, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, because, as you all know, India is a very familiar society, and family has a lot of importance in India. So sometimes the questions don't come from a negative perspective, they just come from an interest in knowing more about what the female is doing in India or about their situation. However, this can sometimes shock women that come to India for business. Other relevant barriers that women face at times that are not strictly related to work, but that do affect their work lives after all, is that sometimes they find difficulties renting apartments if they're single women, or if they're unmarried and they come with a partner who they're not married to. This can pose a challenge, and we have often found that the solution has been to get their headquarters or their businesses in Spain or elsewhere to be the ones that sign the legal contract with the tenants for them, so that they can avoid this difficulty of finding an apartment or a place to live as single women or as unmarried women. And another difficulty, which we have actually been told more by Indian women than foreign women, is that sometimes it is very hard for them to acquire a loan at a bank without the support of their parent or their spouse. And this poses a challenging situation, because when women want to start their own businesses or start working, sometimes they need loans or they need help, and they can't access this without that support. So this can also, even though it's not strictly related to work, it can affect the working situation of women. However, despite all these difficulties that women find in business and in India in general, I want to end on a positive note. Because of the work that I have done, I have managed to meet a lot of wonderful foreign and Indian women who have managed to succeed in this country and this context. And one of the main reasons why they managed to succeed, and something that a lot of them have pointed out, is that there are many organizations right now, and the number is increasing, of these organizations whose main purpose is to help women become financially independent and also create their own businesses. For example, we have talked to some organizations that offered workshops and courses so that this woman can learn a skill or can learn some business techniques to open their own business or to join the workforce. Other options that these organizations are giving right now is microloans or some sort of funding for these women who cannot access the loans at regular banks because they don't have their familiar support, so that they have another option for accessing money to be able to be more financially independent, which being financially independent is a very important struggle for women in India. And these initiatives exist both at a rural and at an urban level, but they're very, very tailored towards the different needs that females face both in the rural and the urban sectors. And at the other end of the spectrum, I've also talked to women who are owners and managers of businesses, and these are both foreign and Indian women, and they have had also the need to find different types of support. And this other type of support has also been offered by these female empowerment organizations. And they have also mentioned that the opportunities that they have found in India, despite of all these struggles that they have managed to overcome, have been far greatly and far more intriguing than the opportunities and the success that they could have had abroad. So overall, there's a very positive feeling that I gathered from my interviews that the women that come here to India, they face challenges, yes, but these challenges are not as different as the challenges that men may face when they come to India, because the cultural shock and the adjustment process is very similar for both. So in conclusion, as I said, India is a challenging country to be in, especially for women. Yet, with assertiveness, initiatives, and cultural awareness, every person, despite their gender, can succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristina, for sharing these interesting conclusions of your study. Now, we have a special guest sending us some words directly from Spain. Writer and columnist Laura Freixas has prepared us a little video on feminism. I have to apologize to our non-Spanish speakers because the video is in Spanish. I'm sorry. We can see it now on the screen.
Por invitarme a hacer esta pequeña intervención sobre la importancia del movimiento feminista. A lo largo de 300 años, el activismo feminista ha conseguido un gran avance en la igualdad entre mujeres y hombres y en la libertad y los derechos de las mujeres. Gracias al feminismo hemos conseguido el derecho al voto, hemos conseguido el fin de la tutela masculina, ya no tenemos que pedir permiso a nuestros maridos o a nuestros padres para viajar o para trabajar. Ha conseguido que las mujeres tengamos derecho a acceder a prácticamente todas las profesiones, a disponer de nuestros bienes, a controlar también nuestro cuerpo a través de medios anticonceptivos, a divorciarnos, etc. Por lo tanto, ha conseguido una sociedad mucho más igualitaria, más justa y creo que más pacífica, pero queda muchísimo por hacer. En distintos grados en todos los países las mujeres sufrimos violencia sexual, violencia física. Es una violencia castigada en teoría por las leyes, pero que muchas veces en la práctica queda impune, como ha señalado el movimiento Me Too. Después de eso, aparte de eso, no tenemos acceso al poder en la práctica en la misma proporción que los hombres, ni mucho menos. Aunque no haya ninguna ley que lo diga expresamente, lo cierto es que el poder, ya sea económico, religioso, militar o político, está principalmente en manos de los hombres. Y además, una cosa importantísima en la vida de prácticamente todas las mujeres es que por la combinación de una serie de factores nos vemos abocadas, lo queramos o no, a cuidar a nuestros familiares, de una forma no exclusiva, pero sí muy principalmente somos nosotras quienes lo hacemos, y lo hacemos en condiciones de gratuidad, lo cual nos tiene como consecuencia o bien a la dependencia respecto a los hombres, puesto que ellos son los que ganan el dinero o ganan más dinero que nosotras y cuidan menos, hacen menos trabajo gratuito de cuidados, o bien a la pobreza. Por ejemplo, las familias monoparentales encabezadas por mujeres, es decir, las madres sin padre, son siempre más pobres que las otras familias. También quiero llamar la atención, en tanto que escritora que soy y una de las fundadoras de una asociación para la igualdad en la cultura, la Asociación Clásicas y Modernas, quiero llamar la atención sobre la importancia que tiene la cultura, en el sentido de que las novelas, las películas, las series, la pintura, el arte, la publicidad, incluso la pornografía, que es una forma muy baja, pero una forma de cultura, es un género audiovisual. Todo eso va generando una visión del mundo que nos influye mucho. Si esa visión es sexista, como lo suele ser, vamos a tener unas actitudes sexistas, por ejemplo, erotizando la violencia o, por ejemplo, pues considerando que las mujeres son menos importantes que los hombres o menos interesantes, cuando en las películas pues resulta que apenas salen mujeres, pues tendemos a creer, sin palabras, sin ser conscientes de ello, pero tendemos a creer que es que las mujeres pues no importan mucho. Y así vamos generando o vamos perpetuando una sociedad sexista. Por lo tanto, es muy importante cambiar la cultura y eso se hace a través de la participación masiva de mujeres en ella. Actualmente el movimiento feminista está en un momento extraño en el que se enfrenta a dos tipos de enemigos muy distintos. Por una parte, los movimientos reaccionarios que quieren que volvamos atrás, que quieren que las mujeres volvamos a vivir para otros, a ser abnegadas esposas y madres, encerradas en casa y con menos acceso al proyecto individual, a la emancipación, a la libertad, al control de nuestros cuerpos. Y por otra parte, unos movimientos presuntamente progresistas que de hecho lo que están haciendo es diluir el sujeto del feminismo, que son las mujeres, en unos grupos más amplios y más indeterminados, que son capaces, por ejemplo, de hacer una convocatoria de manifestación por el 8 de marzo, en la cual la palabra mujeres no aparece, si acaso se habla de cuerpos, que diluyen también la agenda feminista en otras agendas y reivindicaciones que pueden ser muy importantes y muy respetables, como la paz, la ecología o los derechos del colectivo gay o del colectivo trans, pero que no son la agenda de las mujeres, y que además pretenden convencernos de que son liberadores y empoderantes, cosas como la prostitución o la gestación subrogada, que sabemos que son formas de subordinación y de alienación a las que se ven abocadas mujeres pobres en un sistema de clases desigual y de desigualdad entre sexos. Sin embargo, el feminismo al final siempre ha ido logrando sus objetivos, aunque fuera con retrocesos y con dificultades y con malentendidos, pero al final siempre hemos avanzado y además es indispensable que lo sigamos intentando, que sigamos luchando por ello, porque es una causa justa y necesaria y por lo tanto quiero terminar esta breve intervención invitando a las mujeres y a los hombres aliados del feminismo a seguir luchando por la igualdad. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. I'm super proud of you all because the auditorium is completely full of people, and this is the best proof of the interest that all of you have in the rights of women, and in general your interest in the evolution of human rights in this country and everywhere in the world. Today is a very important, a particularly important day because all over the world we're celebrating the rights of our mothers, our sisters, and our friends. I said that it's a celebration that a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, used to tell me, no, it's not a celebration, it's about more like a vindication, like a struggle for the rights of women, not so much like a happy day, but also like a conscious day of the importance of the fight to get back or to get the rights women deserve. As Laura Freysch has pointed out in her message, great progress has been made thanks to the feminist movement. I think it has been said by everyone who came up here this evening, but also we still have many things to achieve in an egalitarian society. And to achieve this one, the most important thing is culture, art, literature, and because it's in our minds that social change begins. it's in our minds where we have the power to become someone different individually, but also to make that change bigger in societal terms. So in the next few minutes, we're going to travel to talk about this inner change towards like a bigger change. We're going to travel all around the world, not only here in India. Of course, we're going to keep in our minds always this country, this beautiful country, but also we're going to travel to Spain, of course, to Europe, to Latin America, and we're not only going to travel through space, but also through time, going to the last centuries of the struggle, of this evolution of the image of women in literature and in art in general. To begin with, I want to make a brief presentation of our speakers today. I will begin with Vijaya Venkaraman. She teaches Hispanic studies in the Department of Germanic and Romance Studies at the University of Delhi, and has been in the field of teaching and research for more than 30 years. Her research has focused on contemporary Hispanic literature on topics around testimony as a genre, detective literature, and 17 themes in the 20th and 21st century literature. She is also a translator of works from Spanish to Hindi and writes award-winning short stories. Okay, well, Vijaya, let's begin with you. I said that you're an expert on the detective novel genre and the tradition. Can you tell us something more about the tradition of women writers who have dedicated themselves to this genre, from, I don't know, Agatha Christie to, in the case of Spanish writers, Dolores Redondo and her Bastard trilogy?
Thank you, Guillermo, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you, and wishes and greetings to all of you on International Women's Day. And as Guillermo said, it's a day when we celebrate the struggles of women who have fought for rights, and because of which we are here today, and we have heard some bit about the situation of women in India from Christina, which was very interesting. And as far as the question that Guillermo has asked me, I mean, one of the feminist critics who has written about detective fiction is that the woman appears either as a dead body or as the femme fatale. So the woman had no role in the detective fiction, which was basically a masculine genre for a very long time. Despite the fact that we have had an Agatha Christie who has written a lot of detective fiction in the Golden Age period, but in contemporary times, more and more women are not only writing fiction, detective fiction, but also portraying women detectives and women characters as investigators and even as police. So one of the examples that we have is from Spain, Alicia Jimenez Bartlett, who creates this character of Petra Delicado, and who is a police officer. And I was thinking about it when Christina was talking, because she works in a situation where the person who's working under her is a man. She's the boss. And the complicated relationship that they have, because she's the woman who's leading the investigation, and how her subordinate, the men who work under her, react to her, and how that is portrayed in the novels. She has a series of 10 novels, and in all those novels, you know, there is a constant reflection of how do women who enter into these so-called masculine fields, what are the problems and challenges they face, and how do they come to terms with it, and how do the men around them actually react. The other interesting trend that we see, popular culture is always arena of debate, whether it promotes regressive values in society, or whether it promotes, it has the ability to be subversive. And this is an element which is there in popular culture, in debates, whether we talk about comics, whether we talk about films, whether we talk about serials. This debate has been there. And so it is a sharply contested terrain where on the one hand you have feminist critics decrying the popular fiction as being regressive, and on the other hand women writers who are actually finding ways to be subversive using these popular fictional modes. So that is in that trend I have looked at works which use this possibility of subversion, and one of the elements that we find is the use of, for example, characters who are not really detectives, like amateur detectives. Like Agatha Christie also had a Miss Marple, and you have in contemporary fiction reporters, rookie reporters, people who are not trained as reporters, going into the field and investigating, and how stumbling upon clues which actually help them to solve the crime. So the detective genre by itself has been considered slightly regressive, because at the end of the novel, order is restored. So there is a belief that the order will be restored at the end of it. But in contemporary fiction, again, we find that order is not restored. Very often, justice is not delivered, and the novels have an open ending, which allows for an interpretation of whether actually in reality justice is possible. So the gaps between what the law gives us and what we actually have in practice is also sometimes brought out in these novels. So I think with that.
Thank you very much, Vijaya. I would like to ask Meenakshi there. Meenakshi is an associate professor at the Center for Hispanic Studies at Nehru University. She has been involved in teaching and research for more than 30 years now. The topic of her doctoral thesis dealt with philosophical ideas in the theater of Calderón de la Barca. Some of her main interests are literary translation, theater, the Spanish Golden Age, contemporary Spain, the Global South, and literary expression. Much of her research revolves around possible ways of reading culture as a dynamic space, both a product and producer of social novelties. All those topics we're talking about now. She has published several books and articles also on in general Hispanic topics. Meenakshi, could you tell us something about women in Spanish theater, but not from the present day, but going back to the siglo de oro, the golden Spanish golden age, please?
Now? Thank you very much, Guillermo, and a very, very happy Women's Day to all of you, and indeed to all the women who have fought for this day together. The battles are still on, and we have many miles to go before we sleep, as they say. And thank you very much also to Instituto Cervantes for organizing this beautiful event and giving us the opportunity of being a part of it. So, so let me just begin, as Guillermo has asked me to go back to the Siglo de Oro Español, let me just begin with saying that, although it's a truism that literature or works of literature can never be mistaken for history, but it is nonetheless also true, and we can't highlight that enough, that literature has the capacity to really have this vitalizing effect, to bring in a here and now in our lives, which the zillion data points of history and archival material are unable to produce. So although we have to be careful about not entirely mistaking theatre and all the works of art that we have in literature as history, but it gives us a pretty good idea of what may have been, how it may have been the situation in the lives of people and indeed women of those times. So having said that, I want to talk very briefly about the, since we're talking about the women in the Siglo de Oro, that's the Spanish Golden Age, which is a very important period in terms of its theatre. It's in an unprecedented way, the theatre caught the popular imagination of people, and we need to, if we need to see the condition of women and how the dramatists have treated the subject, the women subjects there, we need to also think about the fact that, feminism as we see it today is essentially a product of the modern times. But to reach here, we need to also go to the pre-modern period, which is the early modern period, of which I'm going to talk about. So the early modern period, as you know, so many social changes and economic changes and the scientific revolution and all of that going on brought, tremendous changes in society. Along with so many other things, what it brought about and which led to this change in the condition of women, or at least in the highlighting of their condition as subjects, as equal subjects, was the fact that all these the social conditions of the Renaissance and later the Baroque created a massification of culture. So culture really became popular in that sense, and its real fallout was to be seen tremendously in the Commedia. We have great figures in the person of Lope de Vega, for example, Calderón de la Barca, and many other, Tirso de Molina, and many other playwrights who have, who have partaken of this kind of a sense of modernity that we are getting already in the early modern period, leading to this popular stance in culture. So although we know that this is a period of counter-reformation, it is a period in Europe where massive sort of oppressive practices are on in society. Society is largely patriarchal, but through through what they call the Baroque speak, so to say, a hidden meaning, or trying to say something in an extremely in layers of meaning, where meaning itself is very difficult to catch, which leads to a lot of ambiguity also, has also, I would say, although the essential frameworks are the ones of counter-reformation, and as also we can see a manifestation of that is the concept of honor, which is treated, which is there for everybody to see, especially in the plays of Calderón de la Barca, Lope de Vega, and all the rest. But through the female characters that are there in many of these plays, we would not have time perhaps so much to talk about those plays, but through their names only you can understand the kind of importance there was to this sort of an ecosystem of counter-reformation, because the sense of honor, this patriarchal honor which needed to be defended at all times, was present as the ideological basis of many of these plays. So we have el pintor de su deshonra, no, el médico de su honra, which is like the healer of, the titles of the play are the healers of, the healer of his honor, and the painter of his dishonor. So this honor essentially got, embodied in the body of the woman, his wife. So if something happens over there, that needed to be defended many a times by a bloodbath. So those were the conditions of a kind of a feudal society, but also we see these massive changes coming in, and the culture is getting popularized and massified. It's a very gesticulating culture where all kinds of the secular characters are coming into play, and this is also a time when Cervantes is writing his Quixote, and we can see this kind of a secularization and bringing in of these elements of modernity. But overall, hanging over there is the ideological project of the Counter-Reformation. Also, we can see that in the work, which is a great work of Fray Luis de Leon, but extremely patriarchal by today's sense. We can say that is the perfecta casada, the perfect married woman, or the perfect wife, which used to be in those times the sort of a perfect gift given to the woman who was about to be married, in which they talk about, they create this sense of how what is the role of a perfect woman, how she should be taking care of the house, and all the things that we associate with patriarchy and the reproduction of that value system in society. Curiously, it's a very curious fact that some of those perfecta casada posters were later on also to be seen during the 1930s in Spain. And again, that practice of giving the perfecta casada, this book of Fray Luis de Leon, who himself was a ascetic mystic who wrote in the ascetic mystic school of poetry, that thing also got revived during those times of Francoist, Spain, where these tendencies are, Francoist tendencies are sort of getting strengthened in society. So art has this tendency to travel so much in time, and therefore the field of culture is really very, very massively contested, and it should be. In the plays, it is important, and I'll quickly mention just two figures. One, I would like to mention the figure of María de Sayas de Sotomayor, who was, in fact, one of the key figures, and she wrote just one comedia, this Betrayal of Friendship. But it is so important in the Teatro de Siglo de Oro, in the theatre of Golden Age literature, especially for women, because it was one of the first plays which talked about female friendship and how to cultivate that, and put that really foregrounded and brought it to the front. So in that sense, the figure of María de Sayas is extremely important in terms of Spanish letters and Spanish drama. The other figure that I want to talk about is the other, mujeres doctas, como like we would like to call them, the people. We know that the illiteracy was rampant during the Spain of those times, not just with women but with men too. So most of these comedias and all were written in order to be heard, etc., and not really read. So the education, in those times it was very difficult to have an education for women, much less about the other marginalized women who were not even having that kind of financial standing. So one of a very interesting thing that we see in those times of Spain is that women who were who were interested in writing and reading and all of that, these intellectual women, these mujeres doctas, they found a ready partner in the convento, in the convent, because there they could practice and lead a life which would give them, the kind of, material sort of solace and peace over there to practice their art. And many women we found, we can see during the Spanish Golden Age period, who would take recourse to the convent, not just only for matters religious, but also in order to foment, in order to strengthen their own writing and intellectual desires. So we see also the figure of Saint Teresa of Avila, and there's no time unfortunately, but I just wanted to mention her name because she's a huge figure, and the quality of her poems there's a lot of hermeneutics which can go on about the works of Santa Teresa. People have seen a lot of things. People have seen sort of talking with the body, kind of eroticism, which is extremely sensual in nature. So there are a lot of things that we can, hermeneutically think about the works of Santa Teresa de Avila. So this is the background. So the background is of Inquisition, and so we have all these plays. Perhaps if there is more time, then later I can speak more about this. I think my time may be over, so I'm a little bit conscious about the time.
Thank you very much, Nancy. It was wonderful. Professor Lipi Vishwasan completed her PhD from the Department of Spanish and Portuguese, University of Toronto. She's currently an associate professor at assistant professor at the Center for Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, and Latin American Studies in the Nehru University. Her research areas are ecopedagogy and literature, the reflection of space and place in literature, displacement, memory, cultural citizenship, immigration, urban narratives, among others. She specializes in literary, cultural, and historical social studies of Latin America. She also works in the field of comparative studies of Latin America and South Asia. She has published several chapters in books published by well-known publishing houses, along with articles in high-quality academic journals in the United States, England, and India. Well, Libby, thank you for coming. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role of women in Latin American literature, the great Latin American women writers, the vision of feminism in Latin American literature?
Thank you very much, Guillermo, for that introduction. First of all, I join my colleagues in thanking all of you and showing your solidarity on this day of struggle, which not only shows that we have a long way to go, but we have actually come a long way. So we have to also recognize and celebrate the victories on the way. And I think for that reason, this day is kind of bittersweet of the battles lost, but also the battles won. And I'm grateful to the Instituto Cervantes and the Spanish Embassy for giving me this opportunity to come on this dais with my esteemed colleagues and have a conversation with all of you. I would like to begin my talk by paying homage to two pre-Columbian women poets. And they are Macuilxochitzin of the Aztec Empire and Anacuana, the queen of the Tainos, claimed in Haiti and also claimed by Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. Of Macuilxochitzin, whose works have been brought out by Leon Portilla, we have only one poem, but unfortunately Anacuana's work was all oral, and she was at that time a political figure, and it was a very complex, challenging time, because that was the time when Spain came to Latin America, the conquistadores came, so there was a changeover, hence orality met the written culture. So not much has been saved, or if it has been saved, it is not very easily available. However, Edwidge Danticat has written a book for children called Anacuana, The Golden Flower, where it is written as a diary recalling her days during that time. So it's a looking back and a looking forward. When we talk about women's writing in Latin America, what we need to keep in mind that it is rooted in the socio-political, economic and environmental context, which has been defined by colonialism, by the enslavement of Africans, and also marginalization of indigenous communities, to which we have added the neoliberal practices. And now in the 21st century, we of course are faced with the environmental challenges. So how are women reacting to it? And as you know, it's been a big challenge for women to gain recognition in Latin America. 19th century, we had at least some recognition with Clorinda Mato de Turner, though again she was forced to leave the country because she wrote about the indigenous people, and at that time, though it was after independence, there was this, but there is at least a mention of it. But during the boom period, in which it was as much a literary phenomena as it was a commercial phenomena, we hear only such names as Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Julio Cortázar, Carlos Fuentes, and there is a complete effacement of women writers at that time. Now, we see a resurgence of these writers in what is known as the post-boom period, where you have Luisa Valenzuela, Elena Poniatowska, Isabel Allende. They are coming on, and unlike the literary devices that they are using are more in sense of telling the story. It is very important to talk about history through the characters. You know, in Isabel Allende's books and Luisa Valenzuela, of course, we have the Guerra Sucia, the dirty war going on. And what I would like to do is not take much of your time, but talk about 4 writers who I feel are important, and some of them have not got the importance that they should have gone. The recognition is not there. So I will be talking about 20th century and 21st century writers, 4 of them. And as everybody knows, Elena Poniatowska is a very well-known writer and journalist who writes on behalf of the marginal, the disenfranchised, the oppressed. And in all her short stories, we see the way the thought, the patriarchal thought is implemented. For example, I see some of my students here, and we have done her short story, El Recado, The Message, where we have the protagonist who's been told that she has to wait and get married. That is the only way out. And the short story starts as a monologue of this anonymous woman waiting for her lover Martin, and how slowly that dependence on his I love yous, which gives her the validation to be, are slowly eased out. And in the end, instead of writing the long letter that she is planning to leave him saying, I love you and I'm waiting for you, she decides to leave a short message, just tell Martin I came. And there is a point in which she says that we women have been asked and taught to wait. All our lives we have been waiting, and I'm paraphrasing, but we have interior landscapes to explore. And she just leaves Martin's house. So this is just a small example of what Poniatowska has been doing. After that, I would like to, well, it is very presumptuous to say introduce, but introduce Victoria Santa Cruz, who is an Afro-Peruvian dancer, poet, choreographer. Her brother Nicomedas Santa Cruz is much better known, as they have both worked to bring out the Afro part of the Peruvian culture, which is not just the indigenism, but also the African side of the culture. And Victoria Santa Cruz was an activist and a poet, and her path-breaking poem is Me gritaron negra, or They Yelled at Me Black. And that poem is based on her own experience as a 7-year-old child who is shunned by her white friends. And at that time, she becomes conscious of herself as a black person, conscious of herself, of her black body. So this is a turning point in which we see the fight for the emergence and development and recovery of the African identity, as well as the black woman's body. So we have a celebration of the black identity. We have in her poem, she is reclaiming her identity, her blackness, and restoring the Afro-Peruvian identity through the process of destigmatizing the black female body. From her, I would like to proceed to Samantha Schweblin of Argentina, who is a 21st century writer and an amazing writer, whose novel Distancia de Rescate, translated as Fever Dream, was shortlisted for Booker, and there's been a film made on the same name in Netflix. So if you're interested, please go. So in this story, she brings out the negative consequences of the use of agrotoxin and pesticides in a bid to to increase the exports of the country. And in that case, it is the soya plantation. So in Distancia de Rescate, we see the story of two mothers and two children, Caroline and Amanda, and David, who is Caroline's son, and Amanda. And through their story, which has also been seen not only as an eco-criticism, but as an eco-horror, where she talks about the lurking danger, the fear that is always there, despite the seemingly green plantations and meadows with streams, which are actually carrying poison and have poisoned the children, and then Amanda as well. So here too, despite this major theme of environmental damage and unsustainable development projects, she is also exploring the theme of motherhood and of being a woman. So those little threads are also have to be teased out, and I'm telling you, this novel needs at least 3 readings before you can get to it. And it is a wonderful example of the kind of fiction that has been coming now. There's another person, Rodriguez, and Eleanor Rodriguez, and she has a thin novel called La Vie Mutard. Again, it's on the consequences of agrotoxins and the mutations that happen, again taught and narrated through the voice of a child. So after Samantha Schweblin, I would like to come and talk to you about Calixta Gabriel Shising, who is a writer, poet, a Kaqchikel Maya, and she is writing in the 21st century. She is a spiritual guide, and she wants to bring the awareness of the Mayan culture to Guatemala. She wants to bring to the fore the cultural identity of the Maya, especially the role of women in Maya culture, history, and worldview. In her book, Tejiendo los Sucesos en el Tiempo, Weaving Events in Time, she says, and I quote, that she wants to tell the reader about being a woman, indigenous woman, and poor, condemns one to exclusion. However, as she says, native women, in your hands rests Mother Earth, and in you resides hope. She boldly faces the powers of ethnic and gender discrimination and oppression, while at the same time celebrating her community's heritage and the role of women in both spiritual and material realms. She also demands that the world pay attention to the needs and contributions of Maya women and their right to be recognized. And her poems are there if you're interested in YouTube. The YouTube is like a treasure trove where you have Samantha Schweblin's interview, Elena Poniatowska, all these writers are there, and I think because of the paucity of time, I can go on. I will not deprive my colleague, dearest friend Sonia, of the time. That is mine. And the other thing I just want to tell you that Latin America as a homogeneous mass does not exist. Each country, each village, there are marginalized, there are mainstream, and within the mainstream also you have class division, gender divisions. So let us not look at Latin America or Abhyala as one big mass, or the Caribbean, because we have to recognize the very rich, plural and varied culture that are weaving the tapestry of literature, which cannot be separated from history, from socio-political events, or economic and environmental time. We are rooted in this society. We can no longer do arte por arte. Though even there, Alfonsina Storni and are fighting against the patriarchal representation of women by Ruben Dario and all the rest. Well, I can go on, but I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Libby. Sonia, your turn. Professor Sonia Gupta teaches at Jamia Millia Islamia University. In 1887, she established the Center for Hispanic Studies at the prestigious English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, and later the Center of Spanish and Latin American Studies at Jamia Millia Islamia. These two centers became important centers of Hispanism in India. Her publications include several books and articles. She's a Hindi translator of works by José Ortega y Gasset, Camilo José Cela, Gabriel García Márquez, Rodolfo Walsh, among others. She has also published an anthology of stories by Indian women titled We Have Tales of Women from India. And I want you to talk, to tell us more about the publishing, the process of publishing this anthology, and how was it? How did you find the writers, and how was your story?
So thank you so much actually for giving us this opportunity. First of all, we hardly meet, amongst ourselves, so really big thanks to Instituto Cervantes and to the Spanish Embassy for this celebratory event, for marking, I think, as my colleagues have said, not only our struggles but also our achievements. I would start with a couple of things. One, I think that change is not linear. Sometimes when I read the stories, and particularly women's literature, you find that maybe stories that were written in 1940s were far more, revolutionary, subversive. Why even 1940s? I mean, I can think of so many literary works from India from the 19th century. Perhaps later, if I have time, I'll talk about them. And you say, my God, these women wrote such stuff. This today, can it be tolerated? The British couldn't tolerate some of it. They banned many of these books. And I'm particularly thinking of this book, Radhika Santwanam. It is called Appeasing Radhika, which is written by an 18th century courtesan, Devadasi, Muthupalani. Her name was Muthupalani, and this is about Radha. So the Radha Krishna lore is very well known, but normally you would think of you would hear of Krishna as the conqueror of women, with the gopis around him, and his 16,000 odd consorts. But this book focuses on Radha's sexual desire. And Radha here is a mature woman, So, I mean, in 17th century, 18th century, this woman, Muthupalani, was a respected courtesan. She was a very well-known poet. And we find that her work, when it was, in 1911, another woman, another courtesan called Bangalore Nagaratnamma, who is very, very well-known down south, when she was kind of trying to look for her copies, there weren't any copies, so she went to whatever there was available, and she found that C.P. Snow and the British who had done the new edition had actually left out all, where she's claiming her lineage, and they had left out many of the erotic, the entire poem, it's an erotic epic, 584 verses. So it was a truncated version, and so Nagaratnamma decided to republish the book, and lo and behold, the British said, no, this is not morally acceptable, and so it was banned. The publishing house waged a legal battle, and finally they were not able to win it. The book was destroyed, but it circulated, surreptitiously, and it was only in 1947, after India's independence, that the ban was lifted, and in 1952, the book was published again. But even today, it's extremely difficult to get copies. In English, this translation has come out in 2011. So why I make this small introduction is to say that change is not linear, that women of all eras have fought, to express themselves, and that somehow women's writing does get invisibilized because of whatever reasons. So, and of course, whatever reasons though, the reason is patriarchy. So, so while I use the word women's writing with a lot of suspicion and resistance, because I think it is very, it is perhaps not the best thing to pigeonhole writing by women as women's writing, but it is also true that there has been an entire tradition of wiping out and destroying what women have written. So today, if we think of Siglo de Oro, and we wonder which women wrote, which women dramatists were there, it would be very difficult to establish any, so what I'm trying to say is that that was the kind of reason which motivated us to bring out this anthology, which was brought out. It's also very beautiful. It was a beautiful experience because this also shows the kind of collaborative work that we did with our lectora, Francisca Montaras, who had been sent by the government of Spain under the IC to Hyderabad, to English and foreign languages. The anthology came out in 2001. We decided to do it from 1997 onwards, because that was the 50 years of independence of India, which was marked world over, and particularly in literature departments. And we noticed that the canon of Indian writing available in Spanish was predominantly of Indian writing in English. So even if it were women whose work had some international dimension, like Arundhati Roy or Anita Nair, or there were diasporic women like Jhumpa Lahiri and Meera Syal and so on and so forth. Or there would be Sanskrit texts, which of course had been done by the painstaking labor of Spanish Indologists. So we found that, that probably it was important to bring out what the myriad voices of women in India, writing particularly in regional languages of India, was, what was it like. So that's how we decided to do the anthology. But we were also inspired by what was happening around us. If you notice, the 1980s were a very big decade in India's women's movement. Whether you look at the rape laws, whether you look at the anti-dowry movement, whether you look at the participation of women in the anti-price rise movement, these were the formative years for what is the contemporary women's movement in India. And interestingly, the 80s are also extremely important in the Spanish women's movement, who are entering into this democratic transition. So we found that both Paka and I, when we were kind of discussing, we felt this synergy, as women, and we also noticed this lack of women's voices available in translation in Spanish, and therefore we decided to do this anthology. We were also inspired by the various anthologies that had come out in around that time, in the 90s, in India. 1984 was the first, was the establishment of Kali for Women, the very first feminist publishing house in India, perhaps in Asia, as Urvashi Butalia. She has been here, so many of, So Urvashi tells us in her interviews that she also felt, she was quite happy in the Oxford University Press, but she felt the need to kind of bring out the knowledge which women have created and which was not readily available. It's surprising. Sometimes it feels like propaganda when I say it, but it is not propaganda. It's true that the women were absent from the mainstream. Women writers were absent, and so she said that 1984 they set up Kali for Women. So they brought out two anthologies. One is called Truth Tales, and the other one is called The Slate of Light. These were happening in 90s, but the work which most inspired us was the monumental work of Susie Tharu and K. Lalita, which is a 2-volume work of women writing in India. So they start from 600 BC with the songs of the Buddhist nuns, and they come up to the 20th century. So 1991, when this volume comes out, they say in the introduction that in many languages, when they went and they said, no, 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 we don't have much of women's writing. When they went and they found wonderful writers, in almost all these languages. And that anthology, partly also because Susie was my colleague in English and Foreign Languages University. And so my colleagues, Professor Indrani Mukherjee and Professor T. Shrivani, they were also with me at that time in the same department. And we said, let's make a small team of translators. We selected stories. So there are 13 stories. Susie's work is monumental. It's some 70 writers from 17 different languages. And actually they have rescued texts. Our work was much more modest. We just decided to take up post-independence women writing. So we didn't really take up a very contemporary writing. And we just took up the post-independence women writing. So when we were looking for a publisher in Madrid, of course Paca did that work, but even like we were constantly in touch, the people that came to our mind immediately was a feminist publishing group in Madrid. It is housed in this beautiful, picturesque San Cristobal, Calle San Cristobal, near Plaza Mayor. And this was a publishing house which had come up in the 1980s, as I mentioned, and it came up in 1978, sorry. Just after the transition, and just like Kali for Women, which comes up in 1984. And it actually came up as a Libreria Mujeres, the women bookstore. And this Libreria, so initially it was just a bookstore, and I'd like to just tell you their slogan. Their slogan is, Los libros no muerden, el feminismo tampoco. And I have to translate it, that books don't bite, neither does feminism. So that is their slogan, which continues. And so they were looking, one of their stated objectives was to publish women from other cultures, and they very readily agreed to publish our anthology. So we were in touch with them. I'd just like to take 1 minute to talk about this entire movement, feminist publishing movement in Spain, because it's so interesting. So they started in 1978 as a bookshop, but by 1990 they had become an association. So it was called Asociación de Librerías de Mujeres, una palabra otra. So basically this was an association of 5 feminist bookshops, and in 1991 they formed their own publishing house, Horas y Horas, which has brought out this book. I must also say something which Laura Freixa said, that what were the kind of struggles which Spanish women were actually waging in the 1980s. So you could not open a bank account without your husband's permission. You could not fly on plane without your husband's permission. So women who had lived for 40 years under dictatorship, I mean, the kind of energy which the Spanish women's movement had can be seen in the work of the feminist publishing in Spain. And so this bookshop was not just a bookshop, actually it was a meeting point for all feminists, and there they discussed all these things. So we were very happy that somebody like the Femineras were going, under the Femineras collection, this Libreria Mujeres was going to correct. So I'm just going to stop by saying, why did we call our anthology Lihaf? For many of you who have read this story by Ismat Chugtai, so this story came out in 1942, and India was still a colony, and it was immediately, it faced the wrath of the British government because they found its bold exploration of female sexuality threatening. So the story is that this woman, Begum Jan, is, so basically she has this sexual relationship with her servant maid because she finds that the Nawab is not able to satisfy her. Something like the relationship between the 2 sister-in-laws in Fire. Now, so the British actually banned this story and because they found that it was beyond the acceptable modes of morality. And that is the story that we have started with, because we wanted to show women from India not as victims, not as exotic objects, but as women who had their own tradition of resistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah and Vanessa. I completely agree with you when you said that history is not linear at all, and that happens also with the history of literature. And I want to connect this with some of the points you have made before about popular art, popular culture, popular literature, and whether this tracks down the breaking of the ice, leading the path forward, made in the past thanks to the works of feminist writers, women's writers, and also men also leading the way. But if the question would be if popular art or popular literature is really regressive, as you, for example, said, and actually also in the popular theater in the 16th Spanish century, and also about the detective novels. Do you have any comments?
Yeah. Thank you, Guillermo. Yeah, taking forward the discussion, I think just as change is not linear, we cannot, categorically dump all popular culture as regressive or as subversive. Uh, I mean, one of the best known critics who has, literary critics who has worked on popular culture is Umberto Eco, and he talks about the possibility of subversion always being there in the way we read popular culture, or how some elements can be used which can subvert dominant ideas about how women are perceived in society. So as I said, for example, when I was talking about the detective fiction, that you have the femme fatale figure in detective fiction, which is basically a negative figure, a woman who destroys, who's a destructive woman. But that has also transitioned to women playing a leading role in transformative action in society and bringing about changes in society through the novels. So even, for example, somebody like another detective novelist from Argentina, Claudia Pinheiro, or for example, Marcela Serrano, the Chilean writer, has also written a detective novel in which, and I would like to mention a very fantastic novel by an Indian writer called C.K. Meena from Bangalore, and her novel is called When Dreams Travel. And it just completely turns the detective novel on its head by spinning a web. The victim, the figure of the victim and the victimizer are fused, and you are unable to figure out at the end of the novel who is the victim, whether the woman is a victim or she has spun a web of deceit into which she has trapped the police and all the law, authorities. So these are novel ways in which we find popular culture and fiction, especially how it gets. The same thing applies to romance novels, for example, La Novela Rosa. Is it a regressive novel, or there are studies which say that the fact that women are able to even find time to read a novela rosa or a romantic novel is itself subversive, that is the time, that is the model which is allowed to them to read, but at the same time it can have the subversive effect of having women having access to reading, and through reading the fantasy of a better world, the fantasy of you have to imagine a better world in order to fight for it, and without that imagination of a better world, or without the imagination, you're not able to realize your struggles. Struggles are realized when you imagine something, when you create that in your imagination. A space for subversion, a space for rebellion is there in the mind first, and then gets translated into action. So I think reading such fiction gives us the possibility of developing these fantasies, these spaces in our mind, and that's why it's so important. I also equally agree with Sonia that there is a certain discomfort about slotting women as women writers and feminist writers, etc. But I think it is very important to know the genealogies of women's writing. It is important to rescue women's writing, women writers who have been forgotten, who have been effaced. And so similarly, I think by centering the woman as a who plays a very important role in the law, in ensuring law and justice in the detective novel, I think that's a very central role that, which according to me is not regressive then.
What about the image of women in literature, about the evolution of the image of women? I was talking with Elena about this, and for example, she was telling me that when she was a little kid, the image of the heroines, of the heroes she saw in the novels, in films, and so on, the most interesting parts were male characters. And what about the interesting, complex, active, adventurous characters in novels, where the protagonist is a woman? Is there a change? Is there an evolution towards giving more importance to those main characters, those main female characters? You can interrupt yourselves and.
I would just like to say, of course, there has been an evolution in the way women have been portrayed, whether in popular culture or in the kind of themes that we talk about, that women's writing brings to the fore. And there has been an evolution also in the portrayal of characters. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier, but I didn't probably expand on it, was the varied forms of characters that you find in detective novels where women play a role, like from rookie journalists who stumble upon things, or women who are like, you have the figure of Miss Marple. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the figure of Miss Marple, but she's a old woman, a village woman who's a gossipy woman, and through her gossip, through her conversations with various people, she gets information, and then she's clever enough to put two and two together and solve mysteries and solve crimes. So similarly, you have such figures who are journalists. I mean, the figure of, for example, Liz Salander in Stieg Larsson's novel. I mean, such an amazing contradiction between where is the line between the lawbreaker and the lawkeeper? Who is to deliver justice? So I think these are complicated. These figures are complicated. So they complicate the idea of justice also. They complicate what is justice itself. And is justice actually truly possible? We talked about the difference between law and its practice. Today also, I think in class I was talking about the laws getting enacted and in actual practice something happening, something translating into reality. And I think that is the place where you see these women characters straddling complex.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, lest I forget, since Sonia mentioned the film Fire, so as Ismat Chugtai was banned back then by the British, so did Fire in our own times. So I agree with you in so much as that things are not linear, and lest we put our guard down, things are going to get worse. So having said that, there is something to be told about linearity as well as the society progresses, and also we have a background against which we are pitched. But if we lose our guard, then all kinds of non-linear things come up, or their ghosts come up, as we have seen also in the case of the Perfecta Casada, the ghost of it getting back in the 1930s again in Franco's Spain later. So there's linearity and non-linearity, I think, functions together. because if we fail to miss that linearity as well of the progression of society, I think we would be also missing a little bit, if I can talk about theatre, how we theorize theatre. So if we just get stuck on the, for example, the Aristotelian principles or the cathartic principle or mimesis, the function of art like that, or in fact the rasa theory, etc., and just see literature or art or a play or drama like that, which only has a functional effect to produce catharsis and get away with it, and or entertain the senses, and that's the end of the story. Had the linearity in society not gone further, we wouldn't have got other, sort of ideas. For example, the Brechtian idea of engaging with the, with the art form as something which will, have produced this alienation effect, and which would produce a sense of questioning in the audience, about the problem at hand. And also when we start to question, so art should also be able to, disturb you, in a sense that you will feel a need to think about change and not just entertain or be cathartic and see catharsis as the end all of everything. So I think in that sense, a sense of linearity might also come in handy. I would also like to talk about, poetry in India today, and how, women, especially some of these younger women, have tried to, see from their own vantage point of being women, but also having this kind of an intersectionality of other identities, which cuts across then, and then they, start seeing these things and bring them to fore. In this sort of a point of intersectionality, I would like to talk of these two women, which really caught my fancy. And so one is, Meena Kandasamy, and the other one is Jacinta Kerketa. From one talks from a vantage point of a peculiar Indian, problem, which can have parallelisms with certain other things, but essentially it remains something that we need to grapple, and which, as Vijay has also said, that law is something, but its implementation in society is something extremely different. So casteism, or looking down upon tribal people, or indeed people of marginalized, the marginalized sections, is banned in India. The law is against it, but we still feel the need. If there is still Meena Kandasamy writing about, and if there's point, I would just like to read out 2 lines from what she says about, how the Dalit women are silenced all across. And the silence really echoes in many, many women writers all across. So she says, ours is a silence that waits, endlessly waits. But sometimes the outward signals of inward struggles take colossal forms, and the revolution happens because our dreams explode. So we see in Meera Kandasamy this kind of a very, very, a very embodied, sort of a very strong and aggressive tone, which refuses to, accept this kind of a skewed reality in which the Dalit women are going through their own struggles. And this is apart from the other struggles which women go through, but because of the doubling of this their place as victims, the things get very, very complicated. So she's written another poem called Touch, which is again a very tactile thing, which is highlighted in most of her poetry. And she says, but you will never have known that touch the taboo to your transcendence, when crystallized in caste, was a paraphernalia of undeserving hate. So the sort of touch and the sense of the tactile, when it is transferred onto the social fabric of the nation, we exactly know what they're talking about, this touching and pollution and all those practices that are still on, unfortunately, in our society. And coming to the other poet, who's also very, very young, who comes from Jharkhand, the vantage point of the tribal sensibility, she talks a lot about, and since as a woman, who's completely on the marginalized, not just of her social status, but also the area within which she locates herself, which are these ecosystems which are under threat these days, which are the jungles of India, which are not just the physical, trees that are under threat, but the entire life systems, entire cultures which go with that. And she says one very poignant two-liner poem by Jacinta Querqueta, and which is titled "Wait." She says, they are waiting for us to become civilized, and we are waiting for them to become human. So this is just two-line thing. And then very curiously, Jacinta Querqueta's work is not on the aggressive side as we see in Meera Kandasamy, but she's also talking about, she has the grace or that kind of an extension in her to, not just be able to think like a woman, but also accommodate the men in that, also able to see from that point of view, and also place the men as victims in this entire system of patriarchy. So it's not just us and them, but it's the system which is there that needs to be highlighted. And she says, and the title of the poem is also, I don't get birth a man. She says, I don't get birth a man. This world makes me man. The womanhood inside me is killed slowly since childhood. This is how gets chiseled a man. So, in the younger generation of Indian, poets, to me, these two women were very striking because they are coming from this location of marginality, which is twice removed from the marginality that maybe upper caste women or non-tribal women might face as women.
Well, as I was listening to Meenakshi and Vijaya and Sonia, I was thinking of women, I hate to say women writers because we don't go around saying men writers, So we have writers from the Northeast, Isterin Kire, who has started publishing now, and through her works, we get a glimpse of the Naga culture, which is also very patriarchal. So I was reminded of her earlier novel called A Terrible Matriarchy. And it is actually ironic that she uses the word terrible matriarchy because, as opposed to patriarchy, and correct me if I'm wrong, matriarchy is supposed to be a little more egalitarian. Now, this is the story of a grandmother who is so conditioned in patriarchy that she would give the food to her grandson and not to her granddaughter. And it is the story of the fight to get out of this patriarchy. How do the women, what devices, what strategies do they use to escape from this kind of conditioning which goes on? And here I would also like to mention a novel that I have been working with for a long time. which is Gitanjali Shree's Mai, who is so shown in the liminal space. In the face of it, she is she is the daughter-in-law of a well-to-do family, and it is placed somewhere in the 50s and 60s. And her children think of her as very weak, who is at the beck and call of everyone, doing parda. But she has created a liminal space for herself in between. There is a definite inside and outside, where she has created this liminal space which she empowers herself to stop her daughter being thrown into the same black pit where all dreams die and are only seen as cold ashes. So to keep her daughter Sunaina's dreams alive, to keep her son's dreams alive, and Sunaina is the narrator, we see Mai, that how difficult it is to just categorize in black and white the role of women, even within a very patriarchal joint family, for extension. Because there are pockets of resistance which you need to be very open to see. If you go in and expect resistance to be always a volatile, violent gesture, you will miss it. Because as Mary Louise Pratt had said, that during the colonial times, the English Memsahibs were very upset with the Indian servants, because they said every time we teach them something and we go away, we come back and they've forgotten it. We have to teach them again. So what they are doing is actually resisting that we will not be transformed. So we cannot resist violently or aggressively, but we are resisting, in a passive form. So we have to know that the boundaries are porous. You have to see the porous boundaries, the nebulous boundaries between what a good woman or a bad woman is, talked about. And we see that in Isterin Kire's book, and also Janice Padiat, who is one of the new writers coming up. And there is a connection with Latin America because she dedicates her first book to Lo Maravilloso of Alejo Carpentier. So there we are without the borders, and we have to see. And when we talk about the Northeast, there is also other dynamics involved. The thing we can see of the tension between what is mainland. In Bitter Wormwood, Isterin Kire recovers the history of the Naga people and what happened in 1952 when they were not allowed to vote and all. So all those women who come, are complex figures, In Gitanjali Shri, even in Ret Samadhi, you see it is an older woman who's lost her husband. And for days she's lying on the bed and her children are telling her to go, get up. And after days and weeks of saying no, 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 she starts nay, 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 which can be also interpreted as new. That means she wants to give up the old and start with the new. So I think I would definitely agree with my colleagues here that boundaries are porous and nothing is in black and white. Nothing.
Yeah, so this whole idea of the image of the woman, whether it has changed, that was your question, no? So, I mean, of course it was meant for others, but it's such a fascinating question that I thought I'll just make a small comment. So, we all seem to share a certain discomfort with this pigeonholing of, women writing. And if you think of it, actually, there are such fantastic women characters which have been created by male writers. And I'm thinking of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I'm thinking of Fortunata y Jacinta by Galdós. And I'm thinking of La Regenta by Clarín. And, and I'm thinking of Charulata. So somewhere you feel that to say that men will not be able to have the sensibility to reach out to a woman's world, I think is unfair. Having said that, so because, all these characters were, after all, such wonderful. So there's a certain universality about good literature, where it kind of is on. And you might have, so my problem is not so much with with the idea that men can create fantastic images of women, but with the fact that the fact that what women have written seems not to be recognized for what it is. So I think that's where one finds a problem, and that is why it is important to talk about women's writing. And certainly, this is not to say that women don't bring something different on the table when they're writing, in the way whether it's a woman filmmaker, the way she handles the camera, the gaze of the camera. So I think it's very difficult to make a decision whether only women can represent women, or whether only Dalits can represent Dalit. So this identities, I think, are they have their limits. I don't know.
If I may add two little things to what Sonia said. First of all, as I said, identities are porous. You can't have strong walls and say this is it. And the same person will change. If you see shadow lines of Amitabh Ghosh, the character of the grandmother who has faced partition, believes in the riot, is giving money during the post-independence riots. When she goes to Bangladesh, she says, where is the border? I can't see the border. So why are we fighting? Why so much blood? And having said that, I also would like to ask a question to my colleagues and all of you. Isn't masculinity also a social construct? Isn't the sense of who a macho is or who a man is, what does he have to perform, is a performative? It isn't, for me, it is as performative as expecting a woman to be conditioned and go ahead repeating the patriarchal norms. So you see the stereotypes of men as well. If they're sensitive, if they're supporting their wives, oh, he's such a henpecked husband, And if he's not, he's a macho. And that's why I think the point is to be recognized, not exclusion, that there'll be no men, we are going to be here. It has to be recognized that men are also under pressure. And to go back to one of the doyens of feminism, Simone de Beauvoir, who said, I was not born a woman, I was made one. So are men. So can we not say that this journey has to be done together? Together we have to take this step. As in everything, it starts at home. It starts at home when the mother stops telling the sister, talking about India, to make her brother's bed because he's studying for an exam, when she herself is studying for an exam. There's a very beautiful short film called Juice, and it's available on YouTube. It is a story of a typical evening in a middle-class home, where the woman is in the kitchen and working, and endless demands of snacks and cold drinks. And what happens in the end, I urge you to see the little short film. I don't want to give it away. So I think boundaries are porous, and yes, we are talking about men also who have had the sensitivity. Sarat Chandra's, women characters, you have to look at them. And I was also reminded of this, not a very well-known author from Kerala, Murugan, who has written a book called Swarga. Yeah. Swarga again talks about the consequences of the use of agrotoxins to help in the production of cashew nut. In that, we see that a couple has left the city and is in the wilderness in somewhere in Kerala, and they have rejected modernity, they have rejected everything, and they come. And then in the nearby villages, when they go, they see the deformities, and the woman, they don't have any names, they're just known as the man and the woman. She adopts a child whose parents have died, who have committed suicide because they could not cure the child, who is in a deformed shape and looks like a 6-month-old but is actually 11 years. So it is she who pushes the man into action by adopting the child and making the child visible. The man doesn't want to see the child, but she is there all the time and then pushes him into action. And the novel talks about, of course, the fight which the farmers and all the parties did to stop the endosulfate agrotoxin. So yeah, I think we have to take this journey, I would say, on both of us, because both masculinity and femininity are also performances and social constructs. It is when we decide to say stop, that's where the buck will stop. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with Sonia that, basically essentialization of any identity is problematic. And so you have, in contemporary times also, you have, apart from the 19th century classics you mentioned, Sonia, there's also Juan Semillas, and a beautiful novel like La Soledad era Esto, where he talks about the transformative process through which a woman goes through. And I mean, it could have been written by a woman as well. So, yeah, we have such examples, and it's important to talk about these examples as well. So earlier when, Lippy was talking, I was reminded of when she was specifically mentioning Indian writers, and Meenakshi also mentioned Indian women poets, and I was reminded of, a commonality of themes that you see in poetry written by women from different parts of the world. And one of the themes, and which our writer that we heard today, Laura Freixas, talks about, is the relationship between the mother and the daughter. And it's a very important and interesting and fascinating theme, how the image of the mother in poetry becomes the image of tradition on the one hand, that the oppressor, the perpetrator, as in the example that Lippy gave, and you have, for example, Daisy Zamora from Nicaragua, or even Rosario Castellanos talking about Economia Domestica, where she talks about the mother handing down this oppressive tradition of keeping the house clean, and how that is, that the mother has taught her to keep everything in its place and in an orderly manner. The only thing that the mother forgets to teach the daughter is to give her tell her where to place her emotions, her cries, her laments. Where does that go? Is there a place for it? So, on the one hand, the mother appears as or for example, in the story by Almudena Grandes, Amor de Madre, where the mother is an oppressive figure. So you have these figures of the mother as the figure of oppression, who also perpetuates patriarchy and acts out the patriarchal model. And you have mothers who also resist. And you have revolutionary mothers like Gioconda Belli's La Madre, who is the mother of all the children of the world, not just an individual mother, but a mother for a lot of people, a lot of children, and talks about transformation of society for a better world. And even Daisy Zamora talks about, to her children, about how they might have liked a mother who is always smiling, like in the commercials, where she's always happy and comes across as, totally managing everything perfectly. But she's not like that, unfortunately. And she tells her children that that's not a real mother. That can't be a real figure. So you have these complicated, and that's where I think the complexity of characters, which I was earlier talking about in the detective novel, resonates with what Lippy said about the complexity of the mother figure in novels like Gitanjali Shree's novels that she mentioned, where it's not in black and white that you're either this or that. We all straddle multiple identities, and those identities are fluid, and we carry all of them together at the same time, and we try to do what we can with each one of them. But there are resistances which are not so noticeable, and there are resistances which are noticeable. and all those have to be accounted for when we talk about women's position in society today.
Yeah, so yeah, yeah. So no, I just wanted to take from where Sonia left. So I do agree with this that in an ideal world, of course, we would not like to get these kind of categorizations of women writers or women writing as if we think a certain way and we have nothing in common with the other genders. So that's absolutely not true. And in fact, that is what I wanted to highlight in the poem of Jacinta Crqueta, where she's saying that precisely putting Simone de Beauvoir on the reverse, that one is, not birthed a man, one is not born a man, one is made a man and chiseled a man. So we find these figures of men who have written a lot about women and got banned for it also. We have the case of Manto, for example, writing in those times of pre-independence India, and even after that, about women of Bollywood and in fact of prostitutes and other kind of women in his writing, and got banned. And in Pakistan, where he went later also, he was a much hated figure in the popular imagination. So there are these people who are writing and talking about liminality. The same Manto, his short story Toba Singh, then brings to us, that liminal position of not just men and women, but of people as people itself. And what do we mean by being, Indian or Pakistani, or indeed by Indian or Spanish? So our identities, we do have identities, and we are in the course of the day, jumping from one to the other all the time. But they are not the identities that can't be transcended. They are not something that will deter us to be unable to think from the side of the other, from deter us from being, not being empathetic to the other person, wherever they are coming from. So we have multiple identities, and these identities are absolutely porous. Many of the times they are just absolutely crafted in the society, and there are vested interests who would like to maintain them in this way. So I agree with all my fellow panelists that we all need to work together at all times in the society, culture, and indeed the field of literature, whether it is popular literature or that high-brow literature, classic literature, or whatever else there is. It is always this contested field. So you will always find a Clarín talking about the Regenta, Flaubert talking about Madame Bovary, and getting all these kind of very, very subtle nuances of womanhood in all of that. We will always find that. And therefore, it only, strengthens our belief that these identities are not, casted in stone. They are just very, very fluid, ephemeral. They can always be, and in this world, even genders and all the thought of gender has come around so much. We moved so much forward in that really talking about just men women binary as something unsurpassable is very difficult to think.
Thank you very much.
One small thing, that discrimination is never always just very open, which you can see. The most subtle discrimination is the worst of all, because you cannot see it, and therefore you have to fight it. As my friend and colleague has said, two works. One, Rosario Castellanos' El Eterno Femenino, the eternal feminine, where she actually writes a farce and subverts these images of women as you have all the historical figures like La Malinche who come to her. And the other, when we were talking about these androgynous, androgynous identities which break up the heteronormative patriarchal society, I'm reminded of the Dominican writer Rita Indiana and her books like Tentacle and Papi. But I will not take more of your time. But thank you very much for for this program. I think all of us sat and talked after a very long time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.